Hello, everybody. Welcome to our AEW Full Gear post show. It's John Pollock and Ting here with you. Moments after the conclusion of a lengthy pay-per-view from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That was a very, very eventful card that we are going to go through in detail. But how are you, Way?
I'm doing pretty good, John. Yeah, it's 12 o'clock right now. We knew this would be a bit of a longer show, but gotta say, just like the last one, I'm full of energy after these.
Well, there was a lot to this show that we are going to go through, and it seemed to be like this was one where they were not going to, there was going to be ample time for everything across the board here, and it was nothing but wrestling for the entire show, pretty much, save for maybe the introduction of Jay Lethal. But other than that, it was everyone getting their time, and you almost got the sense in the middle of the show that it was just a rapid transformation from one match to the next. It was like one match ended, boom, we're going into the video package, entrances, and just getting this going.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, sure. These matches had a lot of time. All of them.
Every single one.
Yeah, were there any sub 15 matches on the show?
Only the buy-in.
Yeah, it's incredible. Most of these matches felt like 20, and for the pace of this show,
Punk and Kingston would have been the only one under 15. They went in. They only had 11.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's still 10 matches or 9 matches at least going around over 15 to 20 plus. That's quite incredible. And I thought I'd be a lot more spent after a show like that, but.
The first hour was 2 matches, and I was like, there's no way this is ending at midnight at this pace. And then they followed that with a 20-minute Danielson Miro match. But they fitted in perfectly into the window that they had. It all timed out. And I could honestly say I did sense in the middle of the show, I think the crowd, there was a bit of a lull for the Cody tag, and I think that extended to the women's match and then picked right back up for Punk and Eddie Kingston onward.
Yeah, I agree. It was noticeable. There's probably maybe a dip in energy, but they did come back for, I think, the significant moments of the show. But we'll talk about maybe where we feel like the crowd might have dipped a bit.
Yeah, we'll get into it because there's a lot to recap here. So let us go back to the beginning of the evening at 7:30 Eastern with the buy-in, and this became a several moments on the show dedicated to Eddie Guerrero. Of course, today, November 13th, was the anniversary of his passing in 2005, and it just so happened that they had booked a pay-per-view on the anniversary of his passing in the city where he died, in Minneapolis.
Wow, yeah. What an interesting coincidence. Completely unintentional, but this is a show that pays a lot of reverence to wrestling's history, and of course Eddie Guerrero is a big part of wrestling's history.
Yeah, so there was a lot of Eddie Guerrero spots on this show and tributes throughout that we will talk about. But the show began, this feels so long ago, when Tony Schiavone brought out Minneapolis' own Dante Martin, who was asked about the offer from Team Taz, and then he was approached by the Acclaimed and Max Caster rapping about Lio Rush's multiple retirements and Dante being the only good thing to come from this miserable town as they tried to recruit Dante Martin into the Acclaimed, and they demanded an answer or would break his legs. And Martin did not take kindly to this ultimatum and struck both and hit a springboard somersault to both on the floor, and that ended the segment. But a bit of a different start to the pay-per-view, just doing what really felt like a TV segment on the buy-in.
Well, they did do a TV segment for Dante Martin on Rampage last night, and I thought that usually when it's a guy on the card on the level of a Dante Martin, I think even getting what he got last night was more than what we could expect. Usually it's he'll probably lose in his hometown, but they gave him a great showcase match yesterday, and on top of that, they gave him a speaking segment and a chance for him to do a dive on the Acclaimed in front of his hometown to make him feel that much more special. So I thought it was great use of the buy-in, great for Dante Martin, and a great way to promote a young upstart.
And then the lone match on the buy-in was Nyla Rose and Jamie Hayter against Hikaru Shida and Thunder Rosa. So different matches that are going to be happening in the second round of the TBS tournament with Nyla Rose against Shida and Jamie Hayter against Thunder Rosa. And we would learn later in the broadcast that Rose and Shida will have their match this Wednesday. So Vicky Guerrero is in Nyla Rose's corner. So this was the start of the Eddie chants. And the heels gained control of Thunder Rosa for a time. They showed Serena Deeb, who was watching this in the front row. And then Thunder Rosa eventually received the hot tag, attacking both opponents. And then it was Hayter who nailed Shida with a superplex, and Rose followed with a splash. Thunder Rosa makes the save, and then Shida counters the Beast Bomb, sending Nyla into the corner, which was a little slow on Nyla's part, and then got rolled up with a jackknife cover, 12 minutes and 5 seconds, with Shida pinning Nyla Rose.
I thought the personalities in the match were really strong. You know, the crowd absolutely loves Thunder Rosa and Hikaru Shida.
Yes.
But I didn't think the match was all that great. You know, I thought the heat on Shida went a bit too long for a pre-show match, and I thought kind of lasted longer than maybe the crowd's initial interest in the match itself. The rest of the action I thought was okay to maybe being a little bit rough. But, you know, I mean, it was really just a pre-show match, and I expect, you know, in the singles matches, a lot more interest because of a lot more stakes, and also maybe the quality would be a bit better too.
Yeah, I thought the babyfaces stood out. It was a fine match. I'm not going to go above that, but I thought Nyla Rose, like there were a few hiccups from her in the match. So this was not one of the strongest things on a show that was very strong, very high in match quality. So we go to the pay-per-view main card, and actually, before the buy-in concluded, Shivani spoke with the best friends, and it was announced that this Wednesday, the Butcher and the Blade will take on Orange Cassidy and a partner of his choosing. And they brought up that they are now part of Chaos, and maybe he will consult with a pit bull.
He specifically said, yeah, maybe I'll bring one of my dogs. So
yes.
I mean, I thought it was important here, and they would announce, you know, that it would be Ishii later on in the show, but, you know, immediately people are going to gravitate towards thinking it's Okada if they dangled just simply, oh, a Chaos member is going to be there. So I thought it was important that they spelled it out that it would be Ishii.
Is that...
Which is not a disappointment at all. Like, that's awesome, you know? And
that it's Ishii. No, I would say just for Ishii, he's going to get a tremendous response on Wednesday. And honestly, like it probably will be a very good match. I think Cassidy and Ishii will work off each other very well. And for the Butcher and the Blade, it's obviously a huge match for them now all of a sudden on Wednesday.
It is a combination of personalities that is so bizarre that I have to see it. You know, what is it? What is give me a backstage segment, give me a car ride, like something with Orange Cassidy and Tomohiro Ishii. I just need something, because those two personalities are so opposite that I'm just so glad they decided to put them together.
Just have Ishii with like his Walkman on, and every time I die. Interesting music here.
I wonder what he'd be listening to.
Well, do you think that this is... I could certainly see Ishii being here on Wednesday, and depending on his schedule here of doing a singles match, to be honest, like if he's limited, you could still get him for a date on Rampage.
Yeah. I mean, I expect fully this being a precursor to Okada's entry into AEW.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect both of them I expect Ishii to return and
beatdown. Okada comes to the rescue, and we get the Okada Matt Hardy showdown that you have been clamoring for. Way.
Oh, of course, yes. Well, hey, Matt Hardy,
Big Money Matt against the Rainmaker. Yes,
Matt Hardy has been on a roll. He's just been killing it.
The battle for the money clip. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm certainly interested in seeing this Chaos tie-in and what it means for New Japan and AEW's relationship.
The pay-per-view started off with MJF and Darby Allin. It was very interesting when you were looking at this card of match layout and what do you start this show off with. I think they went with a great choice. MJF was introduced as the man that can beat Darby Allin with a headlock takeover. This after he bullied Justin Roberts into introducing him as such. And then a black and white video aired of a car that was out of control and spun over, with Darby emerging from the destroyed vehicle that Excalibur explained this was symbolic of the car crash with him and his uncle that MJF had brought up in the promo. And then Sting walked out with Darby. They fist bumped and Sting walked to the back. But we would see a bit more of Sting later on. But a more subdued role for Sting on this pay-per-view cycle.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the focus really is MJF and Darby, and Sting at this point. I think, you're not really kind of using him for like a stunt appearance, but I thought his role was played effectively here throughout the match.
They had such a fantastic start. They were doing like this lucha sequence where they're connected with like a Greco-Roman knuckle lock. They're getting the shoulders up, they're bridging, and then they're just mirroring one another with their leapfrogs, arm drags, and the standoff. This was already great right off the bat. MJF is yelling at a fan as he is distracted, and Darby, just like a missile, takes him out with a tope suicida. Allin would miss with a coffin drop onto the edge, and then MJF was in control from this point forward, and MJF would roll away from the coffin drop and had to resort to a thumb to the eye. He used the Scorpion Deathlock, but Allin was able to break free, and then MJF suffered his knee injury, which Allin focused on. He used a figure four, and each are going for these inside cradles, and they're rolling all around the ring. The crowd is coming to their feet here. Allin then countered with a code red with this. This near fall has to be seen. It was amazing. Like, the timing of it could not have been more perfect, and the audience just went nuts for this near fall. Shawn Spears and Wardlow come out, but there is Papa Sting to destroy them with bat shots and send them to the back. And MJF brings the skateboard into the ring, rolls it over to Darby, daring him to use it, knowing if Darby uses it, he will be disqualified. And Darby's conflicted, but he hands it off to referee Bryce Remsburg. And as Remsburg goes to place the skateboard on the floor with his back turned, MJF brings out the Dynamite diamond ring, blasts Darby in the face, and uses the headlock takeover to win this match in 21 minutes and 59 seconds. This might have been my favorite finish of the year.
It was fantastic. This was my match of the night. It is one of my favorite matches of the year. This match was incredible. It is absolutely quite an interesting choice, I would say, to pick this match among all the matches on this card to place at the very top, with it going 22 minutes. But Tony Khan must have been incredibly confident, because these two put on, to me, one of the best pay-per-view openers that I think I've ever seen. Like, there's a ton of recency bias, perhaps, attached to something like this. We'll have to maybe wait until, a few weeks later to see how I feel. But at this moment, it's like, I think of Brett and Owen, like when I think of a match like this and how hot it managed to start this pay-per-view off with. And what I loved the most about it was the fact that these two, I thought, delivered a totally different style of match than I think what we've come to expect from either of them. It was these two starting off, showing how versatile they are. MJF proving that he's definitely more than just a talker. Darby is definitely more than just, a stunt man. They're both incredible in-ring technicians whenever they want to be. I thought the build with the knee injury to MJF was done really well. His selling was absolutely incredible here. The way so much of his offense throughout the match continuously hurt himself allowed him to stay on the attack while building his own injury story that I thought was very effectively done. And then the near falls in this match were incredible. That small package that went on forever, I absolutely loved. It felt like very much like Steamboat Savage in that sense. And honestly, it's not hyperbole to me, because I thought this match was that good. It was the type of match that felt like a statement from this company, that told you this was a match with two of the leaders of our next generation. So, man, this thing was great.
Phenomenal match to start this off. And like, when you go and evaluate the outcomes of a lot of these matches, like the booking options that you have left open, I think there's so many different directions for this title picture of where to go, MJF being a key figure there as one of your top heels coming out of tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're both so ready, like They both deliver in any time they're given a big match situation. And yeah, I think, like MGF winning here is the right call because you can directly transition him to a title challenge against Hangman Page. And Darby Allin is the type of guy that can lose and lose and lose and lose and become a bigger star every single time. So whenever they want to pull the trigger on him, like he's ready. They're both so ready.
They followed that with the Lucha Brothers against FTR for the AEW Tag Team Championship. We got another elaborate entrance for the Lucha Brothers where they came out there were like these guys dressed up as soldiers and then hiding for cover as their pyro went off and they came out to their theme. It looked really cool.
Yeah, continuing their series of big entrances. It did look great.
FTR was wearing knee pads where one was the U.S. flag, the other was the Mexican flag. And we got the tried and true heat on Penta where his mask was tied to the bottom rope as they attacked him. They would snap Penta's neck on the top rope and work him over. Phoenix would eventually get the tag. Phoenix was incredible in this match. He hit this double cutter, did the rope walk into the penalty kick onto Harwood for a 2 count, and then gets sent into the ropes where he's blasted by Wheeler with the AAA tag belt into a brainbuster by Harwood. Huge near fall. There was a part in the match where FTR used American Alpha's Grand Amplitude, which I imagine Chad Gable and Otis are not going to be using anytime soon as a tribute spot.
I don't even remember what that move was. Where they throw the belly to back suplex into somebody else?
Yeah, like hoisted in the air into, the belly to back coming down.
So long.
Tully then got involved, grabbing Penta's leg from the floor, and this led to Dax Harwood landing a right hand, and he did the Eddie Guerrero shuffle, and this crowd was like, "You piece of shit." And he followed with the Three Amigos to tons of boos. Penta cuts him off, does his own version, and the place goes insane. He's hitting the Three Amigos. The whole arena is chanting Eddie. Phoenix hits the frog splash, and Harwood kicked out. And Phoenix then kicks out of a spike pile driver. Lucha Brothers hit the Fear Factor and go for a double cover. Both kick out again. And then Cash Wheeler puts on the mask, and he gets caught in the ring using the ropes for leverage as Phoenix and Penta then take over control, assisted pile driver, and Penta is the one to score the fall at 18 minutes and 38 seconds to retain the tag titles. My only thing about this is that when you do a near fall that is going to make people react in such a way, the finish has to be better. And for me, on this day, with that whole crowd chanting Eddie, and they did that spot, I was like, this is the perfect ending. Now, granted, they did have the Jericho thing later, so maybe that would have been stepping too much. And the Punk thing. Well, there were a lot of them, but watching this in real time, it's like it was too perfect, and I don't think they could replicate that with what they did as the actual finish.
I agree with you. I thought the match certainly peaked with the Eddie spot. And I really didn't like the finish, I have to say. First of all, great match between these two teams.
It was tremendous. I just thought it was like it peaked 2 minutes before the ending.
Yeah, really great pace of action, great hope spots for the baby faces. I love the Eddie spot. I didn't really like the ending. I thought it was a little too convoluted and honestly not that satisfying. Obviously they are going to have a rematch, these two teams, and this just kind of felt like a bit of a cheap attempt at creating something disputed that honestly I didn't really buy. There's a bit of confusion here with so is it Rick Knox that's at fault for not recognizing that this was the legal man and even pulling the mask off? Why didn't Rick Knox react to it? Did Rick Knox just forget that who the legal man was, and did the mask play any part into it? I don't know, but there's a bit too much thinking involved, and I don't think the crowd reacted that well to a conclusion, to this conclusion.
Yeah, the announcers just said he didn't know who the legal man was.
So then the mask was pointless. He could have just come into the ring and still have done the same thing.
Well, it gives Rick Knox plausible deniability that maybe he didn't know which one was under the mask, but he also didn't sell after the fact that it was that was Cash. Whoops.
Anyway, so I enjoyed the match. It was certainly a pay-per-view caliber tag team match, but I didn't love the finish. And on this show, coming out of this show, not necessarily a match I remembered.
Bryan Danielson and Miro, earlier than I thought this would be, but again, this was a pretty loaded card. So you were going to get some of these big matches at different parts of the show. So world title eliminator final, and Miro's got his right quadriceps all taped up, and he would sell it significantly throughout the match. Miro just continually shuts down Danielson. Danielson is just trying for anything to get going. He's trying for a swinging DDT to go after the neck, but he is not successful. It's finally when he gets a few kicks in, but then he's stopped with a Samoan drop. He would connect with a flying knee coming off the apron, and then he was able to get Miro down and start on his submission game. He went for a knee bar, but again, Miro's just too strong and powers out with a gut wrench. Miro finally goes for game over. It's locked in. Danielson fights to the rope, and Miro just looks up to the sky in frustration. Why, God, why are you making this so tricky? And Danielson is able to escape another game over as he transitions to the label lock, but Miro breaks out and he's in Danielson's guard, dropping down elbows and gets caught in a triangle. Danielson is throwing elbows, and then Miro has to gouge him in the eyes to get out of that submission. Miro then just stands up, tells him to deliver kicks, and he eats them and then drops Danielson with one kick. And they would do this sequence over again. They're on the turnbuckle, and Danielson hits the swinging DDT onto his terrible neck, and all of a sudden just applies a guillotine, and Miro goes out right at the 20-minute mark, and Danielson gets the victory.
I really like this match.
I did too, and I saw a lot of people that were more down on this, and I thought Danielson's selling was so different, and I was really captivated by it, and I love the finish out of nowhere that has become Danielson's specialty. So I was with you. I really enjoyed this.
I'm curious to know why people might have been disappointed, and I can understand maybe why. Like, maybe in the context of like this whole show, this wasn't necessarily the flashiest match. It wasn't the most spectacular match. It didn't have the biggest spots. But what I did appreciate was just how, I think a lot of credit should be given to what Danielson's been doing in building up all of his submission victories, so that you could, possibly buy a lot of these various moves that he was applying. The guillotine at the end here as a significant thing. And also Miro in selling this neck injury throughout his TNT title run. It gave you a wonderful out that I thought brought, they took great advantage of. Like, immediately after, like, the whole match, like, he teased it. Bryan teased going for the tornado DDT, and Miro immediately saw it, shoved him off. Like, he knows this is Achilles' heel, and he's trying his best to avoid it. And then Bryan ultimately caught him with a surprise DDT towards the end that pretty much ended the match. I thought the guillotine was really just a formality after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like the swinging DDT was the key that he was able to hit. I just thought it was like really different sort of selling for Danielson that really conveyed like the fight aspect of this and having to overcome this size and strength disparity that he has with Miro. And I thought it was like just a really like well put together match that was very different from everything else on the card, which was welcome. We move on to the Falls Count Anywhere match. Adam Cole and the Young Bucks against Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, and Christian Cage. Do you want to describe what the Bucks were dressed up as?
I wasn't paying particular attention. Was it like, you mean their in-ring gear, like the pink?
They were all in purple, including parts of their facial hair that they had dyed purple.
I honestly wasn't even paying such close attention.
I guess they were going for maybe they were going for a Prince kind of.
Oh, okay, the Minnesota deal. Yeah,
I can see that. So this kind of just went through stages where it just escalated in the degree of violent weapon that they were going to introduce. First, it was the chair that Adam Cole brought in. Then we would move over to the tried and true trash cans, which were a big hit here. Then a table was brought out by Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, and Cole gets drilled into the chair with the double team maneuver by Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, and he comes up, and dude, this guy was just covered, just full. His forehead was just leaking blood, and Cage goes for another concerto, but he hands the chair to Jungle Boy, but it's stopped by Matt Jackson. Cage and Nick take off. They go up into the balcony and leads to a big high cross by Christian at his age, 47 years old, coming off of this balcony with a high cross.
This man should be retired. He should be diving off of balconies, man. That was crazy.
The Cole and the Bucks are in control. They bring out the black bag of thumbtacks and they put the tacks into Jungle Boy's mouth. This whole match was about Jungle Boy, as we assumed it would be, and really just adding to this man's toughness. He's going to have to swallow these thumbtacks as they super kicked him simultaneously, but then Christian Cage returned and he made the save. Now it was time to bring in the ladder, and Cage fought off all three with a trash can, and then Luchasaurus takes out Cole. Nick falls... Both Cole and Nick take these big ladder bumps from Luchasaurus, and eventually we make our way up the ramp, and Jungle Boy catches, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Matt that he catches in the snare trap, and that's broken up. So all six fight. We saw Matt hit an incredible somersault dive to Luchasaurus on the floor. Luchasaurus would come back. He would end up doing a shooting star press off of the ramp to the floor.
That was amazing.
Oh, like it was totally lost in all of this, but Luchasaurus did some very impressive stuff.
Like I don't know if I've certainly never seen him do this before, but like this very much felt to me like maybe what a WrestleMania 19 Brock Lesnar shooting star press was supposed to be like. I mean, on a much smaller scale and 20 years later. So, but like they cut this Jungle Boy with like this big shocked expression on his face. It was very impressive.
And then Adam Cole got a gift for the Bucks, and they all have thumbtack knee pads that they put on, and they hit Luchasaurus with this, the BTE trigger with the thumbtack knee pads. Jungle Boy breaks up the cover, and it's Jungle Boy against all three. He hits a German suplex to Nick. Cage comes back spearing Matt, and this is when Luchasaurus choke slams Adam Cole off the stage onto Cutler and company on the floor. This is when he hits the shooting star, so they're taken out. And Cage brings out two chairs, sets up for the concerto on Matt Jackson, but it's Jungle Boy who wants to fire. And he nails Matt with the concerto, and Jungle Boy pins him in 22 minutes and 22 seconds. A big match, obviously, for Jungle Boy. And at this point, after these four matches to start off the pay-per-view, I don't know if there was anything that could maintain this pace. It was just... it was just nuts for like an hour 45 that we were at this point.
Yeah, it was certainly a very big high. You know, this would be where like if Limp Bizkit was signed on to do a performance, I'd probably slot him in right here just to kind of let the crowd cool off. But this was another really great match. You know, there was some incredible effort put into designing these spots. I have to say, like the whole Jungle Boy coming of age story of him like not being violent enough, I guess was kind of lost on me for most of this build up until like the moments towards the end here. Like I didn't realize it, you know, he had that difficulty, committing violence throughout this entire thing. But that seemed to be the way that they tied up the story. So maybe it was something I missed throughout the rest of it. It was very impressive.
Yeah, I liked the way it ended too, in that you got the big win for Jungle Boy, but it was Matt Jackson that takes the cover. And I think you still have this lingering showdown with Adam Cole for Jungle Boy at a future date.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, Cole also took a concerto already, so
Matt should be fine by Wednesday.
Yeah. They got to spread those concertos around. Yeah. No, it was like interesting to see this style of match in a Falls Count Anywhere setting. I don't know if it necessarily worked as well for me, like as if, you know, like what's interesting is that like, okay, we saw the Bucks inside a cage, and the cage actually ended up helping their style because it contained their rhythm and their pace within a small space. So it was like a racquetball bouncing around inside a racquetball court. This was like them trying to work that same pace, but in like a sprawled out open setting. So it was almost like, you know, hitting a ball into an open field. And I don't know if it worked as well for me, Like part of me wonders if they just contained a lot of this within sort of the vicinity of the ring itself, whether or not I might have been a bit more I might have found it maybe that much better. But as it existed, I mean, obviously, look at the reaction here. It worked really well as it was.
I think the thinking was like with all the weapons, it was very much to give this more of an edge to Jungle Boy.
Yeah, yeah.
So following that was Andrade, El Idolo, and Malakai Black against Cody Rhodes and Pac. And Cody had a ton of boos coming out. And as the match begins, Pac is the legal man and Cody tags himself in, so the crowd just dumps on him more. And the story they are stating, can they coexist? Can Cody Rhodes and Pac work together against their common enemies? Pac was really great in this match, and he kind of carried the workload here because the story was that, Cody got struck and ended up selling for a significant portion of the match on the floor, leaving Pac to basically have a 2-on-1 match with Andrade, and more so Andrade than even like Malakai Black was kind of a background figure in this as well. Arn Anderson got his big spot here with Jose the Translator and just beat the piss out of this guy and took him to the backstage area. You'll also notice Arn did not come out with the Denny's menu, so there was no game plan here.
Oh, it was freestyling.
Yeah, I think they were just riding it here. Maybe they didn't even bother because let Pac do everything.
Pretty much, yeah. The game plan was just chill on the floor, Cody.
So the portions in here, in particular Andrade and Pac, I mean, these two are terrific together. Rhodes would finally return, and he comes in knocking Black off of the apron and then applied a figure four when Pac tags himself in, hitting a 450 while Andrade is still in the figure four but grabs onto the rope. Pac then goes for a Fosbury flop, but Black pulls Cody in the way, so Pac takes out his teammate. Oh no. Rhodes and Black then land on the floor, and Black takes him over the guardrail with a running boot, but Pac is left with Andrade, hits a poison Rana, and then climbs to the top. Had to make sure he had his balance before hitting the Black Arrow, and pins Andrade in 16 minutes and 51 seconds. And immediately after, Cash Wheeler runs down, attacking Pac as Rhodes was still down on the floor. And I thought this one, number one, I think some of the time could have been shaved off of this one. And I think it was just inevitable that some match following everything that we've just gone over, the crowd was going to come down at some point. This appeared to be it. And quite frankly, I thought there was a lot going on here story-wise, that it just felt like 4 different parts and we were just kind of putting them all together here. And I just didn't think there was a cohesive story here. Like I can explain what the story was. I just thought there was a lot going on here. And
what is the story? I'm curious from your perspective.
I mean, the idea here is, it's simply that Cody and Pac have common enemies here and that they're working together, but could they work together? And I think that was kind of the simple, it wasn't that simple a story the way it was told. I just thought it was like too much. And
I asked John because there are multiple things going on, as you said. I completely agree with you. And in particular, the most interesting of which, of course, anytime Cody appears in a big match these days, the most interesting thing is Cody and the crowd's relationship with Cody. I'm always curious to see how they are playing with the very obvious heel reactions that Cody receives. And in this match, I felt it was the most, they've embraced it. The most Cody has embraced the heel mannerisms. His over-the-top babyface act, riling up the crowd and eliciting more boos every single time, feels incredibly deliberate. Him staying out on the floor as Pac is doing most of the work, overselling this whatever injury he was supposedly playing along with. I thought that was a very deliberate heel move. I thought they were all very effective at getting the crowd to hate Cody even more. But I thought I thought all that would play a bigger role in the finish. Despite all that, Pac ends up getting the clean victory. And it, and
on Andrade as well. I mean, if you were talking about doing a third match between them, it just seemed like this was all tailor-made for Pac and Cody to fall apart, and Black and Andrade seems to be like more of a unit coming out of this than Pac and Cody are going to be.
Right, sure, yeah. But I think, coming out of this, there are going to be ways to interpret this to say, okay, this is part of a larger story, and this was like a perfectly Brian Mann's gonna cut together like all these clips, together, and it's gonna make a whole lot of sense in a few months' time or 2 years' time, perhaps. But at the moment, I'm kind of in that space where like I'm kind of meh about it all. It's like kind of week after week of like Cody maybe embracing the heel aspects of it and maybe not, and he's just ignoring it, and he's just gonna be a straight up babyface again the next time. I think at some point I realize the need for like the I realize the appreciation for subtlety and for the crowd to kind of like make it out without them having to spell everything together. But I do think a little bit of handholding is necessary to engage the majority of your audience who might not have the patience for a whole lot of this stuff.
Well, the other thing is as well is that whatever you're feeling on the Cody character is like, there is an audience that loves this guy. There's an audience that hates this guy. And now his matches, part of the appeal is it is that John Cena effect of you just get to either boo him out of the building or cheer for him. But in this match, like, he was in it, but he was also removed from a lot of the parts. And I think this audience, like, they were just kind of left where Cody's selling on the floor. You didn't get a big Cody singles match. So you really didn't get kind of that license to just do whatever and make a huge spectacle of a Cody match.
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, like I really felt like it was deliberate that Cody was playing along with it and trying to elicit the boos with his over the top baby face shtick. So it feels like in the same like in the same motion they are trying to build it while at the same time kind of diminishing it. But anyway, my read on it could be completely wrong. So if you feel differently, if this is completely perfect, great storytelling to you, let us know in the feedback.
Britt Baker and Ty Conti for the Women's Championship. Rich Ward from Fozzy played out Baker to her theme, coming out with Jamie Hayter and Rebel. It started where the crowd was still somewhat subdued for, I would say, the first half of this match. And then there was a moment where they're on the edge of the apron and Baker stops a Gotch pile driver on the edge and hits an air raid crash. And this place just came awake at this moment. It was a very not fun looking fall here onto the apron. And Baker tries for the lockjaw, but Conti is right near the rope. And then it was Conti just going through all of her pun finishers. We got the Thai KO for a 2 count. She hit the Gotch pile driver for another near fall. Rebel then distracts the referee, allowing Hayter to send Conti into the steps. Baker follows with a stomp on the steps, and it just seemed to be, how can we make the fans buy that, buy on all of these near falls here, and giving Conti the near falls to kick out from and just bringing the crowd up. And they worked very hard here. Conti ended up coming back, dropping Baker with a pump kick, and then hit a moonsault to the floor, with Baker getting out of the way, so Hayter and Rebel were there as the targets. Conti hit the DD for a 2 count, and then Baker counters a second DD. Each tries for a cradle, with Baker winning out and catching Conti at 15 minutes and 13 seconds.
I like the finish a lot. Like, I like the story of the match. It was like, Baker hunting for that lockjaw repeatedly. Conti keeps being able to reverse it into pinfalls. And then finally, Baker just says, like, fuck this, I'm just going to pin you. I'm not, forget this lockjaw thing. And the end result coming out of the match is that you feel like Ty Conti took the champion to her limit. And I thought they achieved that. But, like you said, John, I thought the match had a few things working against it. It was a crowd that I felt was kind of spent by this point. And the placement of this match at this point felt, it was, a bit lower in star power, at least, in Ty Conti. And it's a difficult position to be in because this audience knows that they have CM Punk and Eddie Kingston coming up. They have Hangman Page and Kenny Omega coming up. And
another street fight. Like, we're doing another weapons match still to come. And, we say these 2 matches, the crowd kind of, dipped down. We're talking about a 17-minute match followed by a 15-minute match as well. So this was it was a lot of time allocated to different matches. But I will say, like, I thought that, Conti and Baker, they had a better match than I anticipated going in, and I thought they were going to have a very nice match together. It was just a portion of the show where I think you could sense that with this audience.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I thought Conti did tremendously well for somebody of her experience. Again, like just to even be on this stage in a singles match, considering where she was when she entered AEW is absolutely incredible. But I mean, this was not without error in this match, and this was not without, I think, signs of her inexperience. So I'd love to see at her trajectory what in 2 years she's going to look like compared to even a match like this. And I love that she got a spot here. They told a good story. Match quality to me was below the usual standard for an AEW pay-per-view. Maybe even, in the women's division, but I love that she got the spot, and I thought her personality and her character was built really well in the months leading up to this.
Do you have any idea of Baker's next program?
Yeah, who have they been teasing here? I mean, so many of the women are tied up in the TBS, but I would imagine maybe somebody coming out of that. There are a few programs in the works, so like you've got Sheeta and Deeb doing something. I mean, could it be Thunder Rosa?
Yeah, I mean, on the buy-in, they specifically brought up the Lights Out match from March. Like, they're certainly like bringing that to everyone's attention, and you could look at that. Now's the time you start to look at that program, and I would build it up for some time before you do the rematch, like maybe early next year. I don't know if you want to hold it off super long, but yeah, she could be right in line once she's, if you have a creative way of bouncing her out of the TBS tournament, or maybe you wait for that tournament to wrap up and then Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker. Like, obviously it's just a matter of time before they get back to that one.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie Kingston and CM Punk. The second these two walked out, this crowd was just lit up. It was an intense walkout by Eddie Kingston. It was phenomenal. Bryce Remsburg has to get between them before the match. It's just an incredible environment here as the two are in the ring. The bell is not rung, and then Kingston nails him with the Hurricane before the bell rings, and Punk goes down, and my God, did he sell. Like he had a flash knockout here. He was just down, and then Punk gives him the middle finger. The bell rings, and this crowd's going nuts, and they just go right at it. Punk drills him with a kick on the apron and attacks Kingston's hand. Punk gets busted open. Kingston just laughs and rubs the blood over his face. And my God, did Punk get color here?
A few people on this show did. Yeah. When was the last time CM Punk did a blade job?
Oh my God, you'd have to go. You're going back more than 7 years.
Man. Wow.
Long time ago. So at one point, Punk hit like the John Cena slam, and he put his hand up in the air. Now, I promise that would have gotten a way bigger heel reaction than I think Cody believes the pedigree would.
This is exactly what I think Cody was going for with that pedigree. Okay,
yes.
Except like Punk didn't have to do half as much and got a huge reaction. All he did was he hit the proto bomb. Which is, I think, what Cena used to call it when he was the prototype.
Right.
He lifted his hand up, and everybody knew what was happening. Like, it was so awesome. This was great. This was awesome.
It was almost like it was obviously like engineered this way, but it was like just the way he did it. It was almost like he caught himself, and instead of doing the "you can't see me," he just gave him the middle finger. But
the lead up to this too, we have to remember, it was like the crowd progressively getting more and more anti-Punk. They started off very 50-50, but as this match progressed, it was very pro Eddie Kingston and anti-Punk, which I never thought I would see.
But then, I mean, Punk had everyone here because then he did the Three Amigos, and
which I didn't. I'm sorry, like I don't want to get upset at somebody doing a tribute spot, and this is CM Punk, who has wrestled Eddie Guerrero, and so I have no doubt this was like incredibly like personal for him. At the same time, I thought he built up such a great thread of playing heel, doing the Cena stuff, that I don't know if this was the best time to do an Eddie tribute, It also came because the crowd was chanting Eddie, 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 but for Eddie Kingston.
Yeah.
So for Punk to respond to an Eddie Kingston chant with an Eddie Guerrero tribute, I thought was just confusing. Even if his intent was perfectly, respectable, of course, but it threw me off, and I thought it cut off a wonderful heelish thread that he had going on.
Well, they then reset in the middle for the Fry Takayama spot, and Kingston drops Punk with an enziguri, and then it's Kingston making the go to sleep sign. But instead, Punk lifts up Kingston. He hits the GTS, but he's still stunned from the enziguri, so he can't capitalize and go for the cover. Punk attacks him with knees from the tie clinch, and then just follows with a second GTS, pinning Kingston in 11 minutes and 8 seconds. I thought this was awesome. I love this.
Great match. Great match. And I have to apologize to Hansi right now because Hansi yesterday suggested whether or not we would see a double turn. And granted, like Eddie Kingston, he was never a heel to begin with, but this crowd booed Punk, which I never thought I would see. And it just shows you how big of a babyface they have in Eddie Kingston. He is by far a way bigger star coming out of this program, as shortly built as it was. This entire week felt like it was an Eddie Kingston week. I mean, it was very much a Hangman Page week, but right below him, it was an Eddie Kingston week. The value he got out of this Punk program, first of all, I think for sure they're going to do a rematch. But secondly, like I'm amazed at like how much this crowd loves him.
I thought like Kingston was going to feel like the biggest babyface on the show, Page included. And you could argue like the two were, of course, they were the two big baby faces coming out of this. And with Punk, I mean, at the end, he offered his hand and Kingston wouldn't shake it. It's Eddie Kingston. They have been able to get all of the appeal of like the Diaz brothers, that they will always be real with their fans and they're never going to just like you as an Eddie Kingston fan, you don't want him to shake this guy's hand at the end of it. You want him to just storm out and leave. And and it just leaves Punk as well, where I think he comes out of this as this still like in this babyface role, but I think people just really got into the fact that this is a real issue that these two had, and they picked their sides, and the majority were with Eddie Kingston. And I think with Punk, this gave him the ability to kind of explore this heel territory that I'm sure in time he will dive into fully at some point when they're ready to do it.
Totally. The John Cena thing he did in the middle is really interesting to me. I would love to know if like, you know, that spot was planned from the get-go, or somehow that might have been like an audible, because that is incredibly fascinating to me. The fact that CM Punk can go from being such a top babyface and in one night be put into the position of the man, you know, the millionaire, the multi-millionaire who has everything, and at one point bullied this poor man who had nothing and fought his way up into this position. There's some incredible story to be told there. I'd love to see millionaire CM Punk, what that's going to look like. You know, like what is the voice of the voiceless going to look like suddenly when he becomes rich? And he is rich, but like here's another person who is poor and who's calling bullshit on the guy who thinks he's a representative of the everyman. Eddie Kingston is really the representative of the everyman. So there's so much wonderful story to be told here, and the way this ended really just felt like it was chapter 1.
Yeah, I think if like Eddie Kingston is just such a special performer that they have, that he's fantastic. I think these 2 weeks, I thought this whole buildup, a 2-week program, and the match that it led to, I think this was just fantastic.
Yeah.
So that concluded, of course, with the non-handshake, and then we have the Inner Circle against Men of the Year, Junior Dos Santos, Andre Arlovsky, and Dan Lambert in a Minneapolis street fight. And this match almost felt like it was just designed for Twitter reaction. Like, what is the most ridiculous stuff we can come up with, from Dan Lambert's outfits to just random moves to random weapons with bunt cake.
It wasn't necessarily random. They explained on commentary that all the weapons were objects or things that were created in Minnesota.
That's right. Yes,
including hockey sticks and bunt cake,
and the symbol for Prince.
Prince, yeah, the Prince logo. Yeah. It got really ridiculous. I love Lambert's tracksuit though. Like I don't know where you find a blue velour tracksuit, but it was absolutely perfect for his role.
Dude, Dan Lambert, like there is a skill to being the manager that finally has to be in the wrestling match, and he was so spectacular at that role. I mean, if you could turn back time, it should have been Bret Hart against Dan Lambert at WrestleMania in Phoenix that year instead of Vince McMahon.
Okay, so you think Vince was the problem in that match?
No, it was
Bret. I mean, and Bret was very limited at that time. But like Lambert,
but to me, you needed you almost needed like Vince to be this guy in that type of a match. The problem was it was like this whole backstory. But anyway, let's not go into Bret and Vince. We'll be here till. But
Lambert was totally like. I'm so happy for him, first of all, because like you can tell this was a dream. Okay, to play like the chicken shit heel manager, somehow finding himself caught inside an in-ring match against his adversaries. He lived it, like this was him playing like his favorite heel, like a Bobby Heenan, getting caught in the match. He was great. So,
in terms of the report card for Junior Dos Santos and Andrei Arlovski, I will say Arlovski like got into it, but there was a moment where him and Hager were trading punches. This guy never needs to throw punches in a pro wrestling setting. They're just not for him.
I wonder what the coaching is like, when you're trying to train somebody who for their entire lives is trained to hit as hard as possible, to try to suddenly teach them to hit as light as possible, but make it look hard. I don't know what the direction is. Like, is it to aim for my ear or slightly graze my ear or what? But it's an art, man. And it's a completely different art from what Arlovski usually trains as.
Could you imagine the other way around where you're bringing these like 30-year veterans into an MMA gym and they're why are you slapping your thigh at the heavy bag?
I'll tell you,
it's ingrained in you.
No, they're totally different things. I'll tell you what's weird was like there was a moment when Arlovski tagged in with JDS and like it was it was Junior Dos Santos and Andrei Arlovski hitting a double Irish whip to Jake Hager. That was like it was as weird of a moment to me as the moment when you and I were inside the arena as CM Punk was about to walk out for his big UFC match. Like those two things were equally as bizarre.
Well, Junior Dos Santos, his big involvement was with Jericho, where he hits a vertical suplex and then goes for a standing moonsault.
Which didn't look great. I mean,
you know what? You almost don't want it to look smooth from Junior Dos Santos. It should look like a guy that has never done this in his life.
But credit to him for like even being at the level where he's confident enough to even try it. He must have pulled it off like,
it is so clear. Like I can't give you a good read on Arlovski, but Dos Santos, like it is so clear. He is completely all in on this.
Mm-hmm. He's like playing to the crowd now after his moves. Like him and Kane, maybe a tag team.
I think it's almost inevitable that they will do that. I mean, here's like literally like this week was the anniversary of their first fight that was seen by 9.5 million people that night. Like that's to something like, yeah, it's 10 years later. It's you're not going to draw that audience for wrestling, but it's to me a natural that if AEW doesn't do it, someone else is going to. And to me, the fact that it's Kane that we're talking about, you have the added benefit that comes with the fact that here was someone that was so completely squandered in WWE that you get that recognition factor of bringing him in and getting mileage out of him. That was, we saw what the value was in Cain Velasquez, and you put him in a setting where he's much more natural. I think there's a total opening for him here.
It's probably more likely that they would be involved in some sort of tag situation opposing each other because, like, there's both, I would say, probably still at the level where they need an experienced person in there to work off of. So, but yeah, there's some, story potential there for sure.
So all the Minnesota-centric weapons were utilized here. There was a Purple Rain chant, and the trash can gets placed over Paige's head as Santana and Ortiz whack him with hockey sticks. And then Hager used a toaster. Did they explain what was the toaster's origins?
Is the toaster created for Minnesota? I'm not sure.
Okay. Guevara hit a springboard double cutter to the Men of the Year, and then
the toaster was invented in Scotland, so I don't know how that worked.
Well, maybe it was
maybe toast.
Maybe this was a specific brand of toaster from Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
Hager got a bunt cake pan that Tony Schiavone had the whole history of, and then Sammy Guevara climbed the largest ladder I've ever seen in my life, and he did his Jeff Hardy tribute here with the Swanton, putting Sky through a table. This was just, the way they shot this at the angle, it looked even larger, and this thing was already gigantic.
It was totally like WrestleMania 17, Jeff Hardy. Yeah.
Ethan Page is then yelling at Jake Hager's wife, who is in the front row, when all of a sudden, there is Baron Von Raschke. Dude, there are a few moments that truly grab me, but this moment I was like, holy Christ, they got Baron Von Raschke.
They introduced him before the match.
I missed that. I totally missed it. This is the first time I saw him, was this moment at the end. I think it was a mistake to introduce him at the beginning.
Well, I don't know how many people would recognize, outside of Minnesota, Baron Von Raschke.
Oh, well,
outside of John Pollock, I would say.
I mean, Baron Von Raschke is very recognizable, but I guess it is a generation or so removed. But he applies the claw to Ethan Page. This was seriously one of my favorite spots of the whole night.
I love that you didn't know that they introduced him, because I thought that worked perfect for you.
Wait, we had like 3 minutes in between matches. Like if I had to go to the bathroom, I was like sprinting tonight. There was no downtime at all. So I completely missed the introduction. And so this was way better not knowing that he was in the crowd. and then it's weird. Like we went from what was, I don't want to call it a comedy match because you had like some serious stuff in it, or at least like weapon stuff. But then we got into,
but the weapons were comedy weapons. Like
they were, but then you had the Guevara spot, which was like a very dangerous spot. But yeah, there was definitely like a more like humorful direction to all of this that I was going for. But then it's Lambert left with Jericho, and Jericho attacks him and goes for the lion salt, and JDS was clearly late getting to strike Jericho, who had to kind of hold on to the rope for a moment. And anyway, he puts the walls onto Lambert and hits him with a stapler in the balls, and then Jericho points up to the sky. He hits a frog splash in honor of Eddie Guerrero, and he pins Dan Lambert in 19 minutes and 38 seconds.
I thought it was a bit of a bowling shoe ugly match, I have to say. And I think looking at the on paper, like I think many of us expected it would be. You know, the question is what sort of bells and whistles they would use to hide the inexperience in the match. I thought they actually trusted JDS and Arlovsky with a lot more than I expected. You know, there really weren't as many bells and whistles, I would say, in this one. This was like very much a straight up like plunder match, street fight type of match. Big spots involving the experienced wrestlers. But unfortunately for me, what kind of stands out outside of, you know, the big spectacular dives are a lot of the missed spots, including, you know, when JDS missed the awkwardness that came with like Chris Jericho hanging on for that lion salt and JDS missing his mark. I also feel like at this point in the show, and maybe the match itself could have been shorter, but it had fun moments. In particular, anytime when Dan Lambert was in the ring, I thought he was fantastic, playing just a chicken shit heel manager. I didn't love this, and I don't know if the crowd was really there for it either, but I have to say, I'm surprised how much they got out of this ATT feud. I mean, it exceeded my expectations overall, the feud.
Yeah, I'd be curious to get the contrast between people that were in the building that probably got some of the more like Minnesota-centric stuff. They got to sing Judas. They got all of that stuff. I'm sure it was like a fun match for a lot of the people there. If you're watching it, I mean, this was a 20-minute match really late into the show where you're getting a lengthy main event at the same time. And there was like a lot of crossover between this and the Falls Count Anywhere match that you had seen in the same night as well. So you tried to differentiate them.
And the Eddie spot too. I mean, again, I hate to say it, like, because Chris Jericho, looking at him and how emotional he was, I know this, like, hard to say like who should get the Eddie spot on his show, because I think he means so much to so many people. But
the people on the show outside of Vicky, I mean, Jericho would have been the closest friend to him. It's a generation of people that grew up watching Eddie. Very few that worked with him. Like, yes, Punk worked with him, but not to the extent Jericho did.
Totally, yeah. And if this was the WWE, I think they would communicate between the matches and actually probably just save it for maybe one particular spot. And maybe there was communication behind the scenes too about like, hey, you're gonna do it here? Okay, sure, you do it too. Okay, whatever, we'll do our own thing. But I mean, it did kind of diminish the impact of this.
Knowing this finish way, which, I mean, this was the finish with Jericho, and it makes total sense. I would have eliminated the Lucha Brothers spot in that match, because that was a huge high point in that match. And
it was so good though in the match, but you're right.
It was great. But if you're looking at if you are the person putting this whole show together and know that is your semi-main event finish, and that wasn't even the finish earlier as well. But nonetheless, it was. I'm not going to get bent out of shape over tribute spots. It's just more so if you are laying all of this stuff out at the same time. So announced for Dynamite on Wednesday is Orange Cassidy and Tomohiro Ishii against The Blade and The Butcher, Nyla Rose and Hikaru Shida, and The Acclaimed taking on Lio Rush and Dante Martin. And with that, Tony Schiavone announces the newest member of the AEW roster, Jay Lethal, who comes out and immediately makes a challenge to Sammy Guevara for the TNT Championship. Guevara, fresh off his match, comes out, accepts, and this is added to Wednesday's Dynamite as well.
I have to say, of all the free agents out there, even those available from ROH, I didn't really think of Jay Lethal as being a big candidate to enter AEW. But why not? The more you think about it, he certainly fits into the style. He can promo. He has a personality. You can throw him into the upper mid card, maybe even lower main card right away. So, I'm interested in seeing it. I'm always curious about Tony Khan's kind of philosophy on who he picks and who he doesn't. Bobby Fish, I really wasn't completely high on when he entered, and look at him. I think he's great now. Maybe Lethal can, impress as much.
And then we go on to the main event of Kenny Omega and Hangman Page for the AEW Championship. And they aired this spectacular video of Hangman riding through the empty streets of Minnesota as on a horse, as there's footage of him losing to Jericho, costing the Bucks, the breakup, all playing on the buildings in Minnesota. He pulls up to the Target Center, gets off the horse, and enters the building. What an amazing video this was.
Great looking entrance video. I think a still shot of this leaked on the internet, maybe in the weeks ahead of it, was just Hangman Page on a horse in the middle of the street. And that alone, I thought was enough to pique my interest. And to see the actual video, it was really well done. Great. It was awesome. But it was also one of those cases where you knew exactly who was going to win this match.
Wait, I think we knew from the second.
Knew. Yeah.
Honestly, if you had any bit of doubt, it was just so clear what the outcome needed to be. I think all night long, to be quite honest.
Oh yeah,
it's not in the lead up. Yeah.
It's not a criticism at all. But it's just one of those things where it just took me back to WrestleMania 12, where even as a kid, even as a young Mark, I knew the guy coming down the zip line was probably going to beat Brett.
Well, there was Kenny Omega coming out, and yes, his title reign was looking, the minutes were numbered. Don Callis got involved early behind Paul Turner's back, choking Page. There's a lot of fighting on the floor, and Omega gets into his routine of the Snapdragons, V-trigger, and then Page stops the One-Winged Angel with a victory roll. Omega goes to the Tiger Driver 98, only gets a 2 count. Page hit the fallaway slam moonsault combination of Banditos off the top. That looked great. And then Page came off the top post with a flying clothesline, putting Omega through a table at ringside while also crashing his knee into the desk. And Page goes for the buckshot lariat, but Omega just collapses. So in the ring they go, and Page misses with his own version of the V-trigger and hits a pop-up powerbomb, goes for the buckshot, but Omega pulls Paul Turner into the way, and Paul Turner takes the buckshot lariat. So Callis gets involved, Page nails him, and it must have been a hell of a punch because Don Callis was unconscious for the whole rest of this, from this punch. He ducks the belt shot from Omega, Deadeye, there's no referee, Aubrey Edwards runs down, and Kenny Omega, perfect kick out at the very last moment. And Omega comes back with a bunch of knees, and Omega hits the V-trigger, and Page responds with a discus lariat. Both men are down. Omega's landing Kawada kicks. Page roars in his face, takes him down with a lariat, and then the Young Bucks come out, and they're hobbling, selling the injuries from the Falls Count Anywhere match. And Page and Omega felt, you know what, before we get into this closing sequence, how about we drop each other as close to straight on our heads as possible? Okay, cool. You want to both do it? Yeah, we'll both drop each other. High angle, right on our necks. These look just insane. And then Page, he sets up for the buckshot lariat and goes into a V-trigger. Page then counters the One-Winged Angel, and Page hits the One-Winged Angel to Kenny Omega, who kicks out of his own finisher. Page goes to the apron. He looks down, and he sees Nick Jackson. They look eye to eye, and he hits a buckshot to the back of Omega, goes to the opposite side, looks down, and Matt Jackson gives him the nod, and he hits the buckshot lariat, pinning Kenny Omega in 25 minutes and 11 seconds. The pop for this 3 count was insane. This whole crowd exploded, and Hangman Page is your new champion. The Dark Order came out to celebrate. They presented him with a beer, and they all hugged. And no one came out to attack Page. There was no cash in. So much heat was completely extinguished here in the Target Center. Golden opportunity ruined, and they're left with a super popular babyface that this whole arena was in love with. I mean, complete blowing title change, in my opinion, Way. The heels that could have been benefiting from this, where the crowd leaves, I hate this company. I'm never buying another ticket again. All of that was squandered.
What are they going to do for the next pay-per-view, if not a rematch? You know, come on. They should have been disputed finish, really. Hey, the finish we all expected, and it was every bit as wonderful when we all saw it. I loved it. What I didn't see coming was maybe the bit of acting at the end and the bit of melodrama at the end with the Bucks giving the nods, which was like, I thought perfect. It was like absolutely the right amount of kind of like Shawn Michaels style, like perfect cheesy acting for a professional wrestling match. And
Hangman did not look at his hands first before checking with the Bucks.
Looking at his hands. What do you mean? What's that?
That was a staple of some of the NXT storytelling.
Oh, okay. He didn't say I'm sorry, I love you either, but Matt did wink. Like, and said good. Like, it's so corny to repeat, but like, it's perfect in pro wrestling. I think you need certainly some of these elements, and it takes skill to pull off. And I thought this was just the right amount here, tying back to the bigger story, because this was very much a storytelling match. And I think in a simple look from both of the Bucks, it was like they were conveying that they understand that the person that they've looked down on this entire time has finally overcome all of his inadequacies, and that he is tonight. He's better than Kenny. He is better than the Bucks. He's better than the Elite. It was a wonderful finish. I really liked it. And the end of a very wonderful match. I did feel maybe the crowd, a little bit quiet, like maybe subdued, but they were captivated, and they all wanted and were invested in seeing this guy win. So, yeah, what did you think of the match, John?
I thought it was a great match. I mean, all credit to them. This late in the show, following all that they did, that was a significant task on their shoulders for it. But I thought there was a lot of creative stuff that was mixed into the match. I thought they saved, like, the idea of Kenny taking the one-winged angel. I thought was, that was a cool spot. The ending is, I just thought it was a great crowning of Hangman Page, where it felt like you've waited for this story long enough, and it's not about just keep extending it and extending it. Like, you gotta strike when it's hot, and it felt like, man, when that 3 count hit, this whole crowd roared, and I think it was the perfect timing. It just seemed like a great setup for Hangman Page. It was a phenomenal pay-per-view.
It really was. It really was. Top to bottom, I thought it had tremendous energy throughout the entire thing. Whereas All Out, I thought was built off of great wrestling, but I think you were left thinking about surprises. This one wasn't really, didn't really have any big surprises, I would say, other than Jay Lethal, if you would consider that. But I would say this one was more so built off of incredible wrestling and very satisfying conclusions to story in the main event. So.
Which is also, I think, notable, the fact that they did not feel that pressure of having to go out and just sign somebody to have that buzz that people are going to be comparing to the last pay-per-view. Like, this was more so, we've got our main players in place, and now it's executing the product. Like, it's surprises are going to get giant reaction. It's like pretty much what is going to top what you did in September? I don't know if there's anybody out there you can bring in that's going to generate that level of interest, but you can always go to that well. It's like people are going to pop for new faces, and this was more so, we're not going that direction. We're just going to put out a kick-ass, non-stop wrestling show for 4.5 hours, and that's what they did. And, to varying degrees, like some matches not as strong as others, but as a whole, like, this was an outstanding show.
When you have, I think, a story as well built as the Hangman Page story, when you have a character that the fans are as invested in to win a championship as Hangman Page, there's nothing that should top that at the end of the show. That should be the lasting thing. And for AEW, I mean, Page really is the first guy that they built from the ground up into becoming a champion. And I think it's as much of a win for AEW as it is for Hangman Page himself. So that to me should have been the biggest talking point coming out of this.
And you come out of it where you've got Hangman Page and Bryan Danielson, and I think you have big contenders in MJF and CM Punk. It's like they have a lot of interesting options of where they can go, not even taking into account like New Japan options or something in left field that they might have for Hangman Page beyond Danielson in the immediate. But
and that's Page. Now Kenny is free too to face any of those guys. Yeah.
Or I mean, here's a guy that it's like, who knows, like, what his if he needs some time off. I mean, this guy has, it just seems he is always dealing with some kind of injury. It's not the worst thing, like, for him to disappear for a while and then come back refreshed when you're ready to go with, I mean, God knows how many ideas you could have lined up for him.
And what does this mean for the Bucks? Are they baby faces now? What does it mean for their association with Adam Cole? Does Bobby Fish and potentially a incoming former member of the Undisputed Era? How does
that's the main story. I think that's the main story coming out of this is the state of the elite.
Very fascinating.
All right. Well, there you go. That was our recap of AEW Full Gear, and now we will open up the full phone lines.
Yes, Post Wrestling Cafe members, Double Plus patrons, you always have access to our post pay-per-view live shows where we can broadcast to you right after the events, as well as take your phone calls. And we start off here with Hansi. Hansi, welcome back to the show.
What's going on? Wait, first of all, no apologies needed, man. Because sometimes my takes are sometimes a wild card tape. And you actually had me doubting myself in the sense that I'm like, yeah, maybe Punk won't get booed. But, like, when he did that John Cena stuff, man, that was incredible.
That was awesome.
I need Kingston to do "You Become the New York Yankees" promo. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, totally.
The only matches I didn't really like were the Cody match. Not that I didn't like the women's match. It was just like I think that they suffer from the crowd, and the Inner Circle one was a little bit too much for me, a little bit. But honestly, the MJF, the Daniel Bryan and Miro, Punk and Kingston, and then the final match. And honestly, the final match was the one that really mattered if they're gonna pull the trigger. And yeah, man, I'm outraged that we didn't get heel heat. You know what I mean? Like I was. I wanted to come on and just bitch for like 5-10 minutes on your show. But no, honestly, man, that was a great moment. It felt like a WrestleMania 14 moment of like changing of the guard to me, in my personal opinion. And I think when Punk was doing the Three Amigos, I think because I noticed that when the crowd was booing him, he was actually shocked the crowd was booing him. And I looked at it as he was trying to win them back by doing the Three Amigos. But like, it kind of like, it kind of.
But then why would he do the Cena stuff?
Well, I think that's trying to show. I think that's trying to show that like his character is getting like shaken by the booze. So then he wanted to like deflect the booze by trying to get some last minute stuff. I mean, that's how I'm interpreting it. But yeah, I could be wrong. But
it seemed like he was like embracing the heat to me.
He was embracing it, but then his character like probably doesn't like his character wise. He doesn't want the booze. Like, in real life, he probably wants the booze. But I mean, yeah. But no, listen, the pay-per-view was excellent. And before I go, I just want to ask you guys. Do you guys? I think Bryan Danielson's a good first opponent for Paige. Do you guys think they'll wait till like the first TBS show, or do you think they'll wait for Battle of the Belts? Because I think if Paige beats Bryan and he gives Bryan his first loss, that automatically puts Paige's title reign like in the upper echelon, because his first defense is beating someone as made as Bryan Danielson. Sorry, and I'll leave you guys with that, man. And thank you for a good show and a good week of shows, man. You guys have always killed it with all your shows, man. I really appreciate you guys, man.
Thanks, Conti. Thanks for always calling in and contributing. What do you think, John?
Do you think they hold off that long way till January?
I mean, it's a big match. It really is. And
I honestly think that the launch on. Like the timing of it all is that the launch on TBS is January 5th, and this date for the Battle of the Belts is expected to be January 8th. So you're talking 3 days apart.
Those are two big shows.
Yeah. I think like the launch on TBS is the bigger priority. That's where your main show is going to be every week. You want to establish it with something big. That's a long time to hold off on this match. You're talking almost 2 months. Is Danielson just going to wrestle this whole time?
God, is it really 2 months? Wow, it's only November. Yeah, you're right.
Like think about that. That's the gap between All Out and this pay-per-view, pretty much.
Yeah, no, it's. I think we've been very spoiled, perhaps, but I mean, they've also been pretty protective of like title defenses. I don't think 2 months is completely out of line, especially now that they've, built some other champions. Maybe it's a chance for Sammy Guevara to take more of a center stage with the TNT title. But it's such a big match that I see them holding off. But what do you guys think? Kate, what do you think?
Hello.
Hey, Kate.
Hi, good to talk to you. Thank you so much for the show as always. I think I tend to I agree with you. What I heard of your reactions to the show. I thought most of it again built around a lot of great wrestling, some brilliant matches in there. I absolutely loved MJF versus Darby. I thought that was just. I was blown away by that. Like, I honestly didn't know how they were going to top that for a while. I think that the main event did, just because there was so much emotion and everything involved there. But the Minnesota street fight didn't really work for me. It didn't really come together. Excuse me. And yeah, the Cody Malachi Black Andrade pack match, I thought was just that was the one real weak spot of the show to me. I thought it just did not get going. The pacing was really weird. There were too many tags in and out. Like I think if they were going to put something else on the show, they should have just gone with the rubber match between Andrade and Pac. Like that would have been more kind of in keeping with this wrestling showcase that they were doing. Yes, I'm curious to see what happens with Danielson and Page now.
Where would you do the match?
I actually, if I might do it sooner rather than later, I think that I think that people want to see that happen. I also I think Page will win, and I do think that it's going to give him that extra boost. But the thing is, for a really good story, I think that they need to put Page up against a heel, and that's not Bryan Danielson. So I think the allure of a Page Danielson match is just that it's going to be a fantastic match. I
guess they can't they have Page defend against somebody else in the interim, or at least have a match, in the interim?
I don't know. If you're the number one contender, doesn't that put you next in line? I don't like, there's no rules. They can make this up as they go along. It's
Bryan can be taken out, maybe. I don't know. They can do whatever. They can explain it. But sure.
I kind of see it happening sooner than later. I think January is a long stretch, unless you just want to announce it so far out. But I think that kind of like limits you in what you can do from now until then. And they do have some big Dynamites coming up in the next while. Yeah. They're going back to Chicago in a few weeks. They've got the Long Island show. I mean, and for all we know, they might end up doing another kind of big December show like they did last year.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, I had it in my head that they were probably going to do another Winter is Coming, and they haven't announced that. But that's just that was my thought process. In which case, that would happen in December, but we shall see. I guess it's just because that's what they did last year. So just before I go, I have one question for you guys, and I'm sorry if this is going to seem like a downer thing, but with Jay Lethal being brought on to AEW and welcomed into the fold, do you think that then opens the door for other wrestlers named in the Speaking Out allegations to be kind of rehabilitated and brought in to AEW or other sort of mid to large promotions and get back on television?
Yeah. So for those that maybe are not aware, or, anyway, it was some time ago, but Jay Lethal was, he was named with several allegations. The first were in 2018 by Taylor Hendricks, and this was the one where ROH stated that they were going to do an investigation into it and never disclosed their findings of the investigation, but continued to use Lethal. And then it was last year during the Speaking Out movement when Kelly Klein had stated that multiple women had brought complaints and evidence of sexual misconduct and harassment by Jay Lethal. I actually have the tweet right in front of me here. Now, Jay Lethal did issue a response to that, stating that, denying it and stating,
he's denied any categorical any wrongdoing.
So that's where it stands. ROH. I mean, they did address the initial allegations in 2018 and said they were going to look into it. But again, they never disclosed those findings and have never, stated anything other than they have continued to use him and have obviously felt comfortable to do so. And I think it's a completely fair question of AEW of your confidence in utilizing Jay Lethal, and I think that's where it stands. Like, you have these,
and he's certainly not the only man to be accused who denied any wrongdoing. Like, that's so all of these things just come down to like a he said, she said thing. So at some point, it becomes a question of who else can have their image rehabilitated? Because there's definitely some people who I think could, who would be of interest to different promotions.
Yeah, it becomes a very tough situation when it's, as you said, Kate, like he said, she said, and you are kind of left like it seems to have been the pattern where it's sort of where you as the consumer are kind of left where you have to make the decision of who are you comfortable watching. And I mean, is the company going to state anything about this? Unless they are pressed to do so, I don't imagine AEW is going to voluntarily open up this issue, but it should be asked.
Thank you so much for your time, and take care. Have a good
All right.
night.
Thanks a lot, Kate.
Thank you, Kate. Shall we go to the forum, John?
All right. We will go to forum.postwrestling.com and
you want me to start?
Here. Yeah, why don't you start?
Let's go to Rich from East Selkirk, Manitoba, who says, this was a good one. Probably not as big as All Out from September, but still, one of the best shows of the year. When your first match is as good as MJF versus Darby, and the quality of each one afterwards was really good. Although my standouts have to be MJF Darby, the Falls Count Anywhere, Punk Kingston, and the main event with Hangman winning. And to not have Danielson Miro and the street fight, a messy fun time, but come on. Baron Von Raschke giving a claw made me think of my late father, who loved the guy. Up there shows how good of a card this was. 9 out of 10.
John from Saskatoon, I'm definitely too young to have experienced buying a pay-per-view on a cable provider back in the day, so the $40 price was a bit steep, but I definitely got my money's worth from that show. Sometimes the predictable booking is the best booking. I knew Hangman had to win it, and when he did, it really did feel like a big relief. Great match. One nitpick is that some of the matches went too long, namely the Super Click against Christian and the Jurassic Express. American Top Team against the Inner Circle was surprisingly fun. I dogged it earlier thinking I would have been a mess, but I'm glad I was wrong. CM Punk versus Eddie was my match of the night. Was hoping that Eddie would win, but I think this sets up a longer feud between Punk and Eddie. Who'd have thought that Eddie would get more cheers than CM Punk, but Punk knew exactly how to play it up. I can definitely see why people call him the best in the world.
Brandon from Oshawa says, I have to admit, when Hangman Omega came to an end, even though I was happy Hangman won and it ended how I wanted it to, with the Dark Order holding him up, I was underwhelmed at the end of the match. Maybe I hyped it up in my own head to be something more epic. I definitely thought Hangman would kick out of the one-winged angel, and I thought Hangman hitting it on Kenny was to give us something, since we weren't getting Hangman kicking out. I also did not like the stuff with the Young Bucks. It makes no sense when there has been no tension between them and Kenny, and if they suddenly become friends again, Dark Order should be pissed. The rest of the show was fantastic. I definitely disagree with there not being tension between them and Kenny. Like, that's the entire story.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes no sense. I'm trying to interpret what Brandon is suggesting here. It makes no sense when there has been no tension between them and Kenny, and if they suddenly become friends again, Dark Order should be pissed. So he's saying there hasn't been tension between the Bucks and Kenny?
Right. So I guess he's questioning why the Bucks would give the nod to Hangman. Yeah, like kind of.
So the idea,
in a sense, choosing Hangman over Kenny.
I don't think it was so much that, though. I think it was them choosing what's right, choosing the moral outcome here of a fair fight, and letting Paige have his moment. A former friend have his moment, rather than doing the predictable heel thing again. Like I just thought it was them choosing the side of morality this time around and letting events proceed as they should, rather than them specifically not, hating Kenny.
Yeah. And again, it ties back to that promo we brought up on the preview when Hangman went to the Bucks to be in his corner when he took on Chris Jericho, and they turned it down. And here, when he finally wins the title, there are the Bucks ringside for the match.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I'm intrigued of like where this whole story goes, and like Kenny's reaction, and I think there's just a lot of interesting ways of which they can go that I'm sure are mapped out.
Certainly. And again, I want to give a shout out to Brian Mann's excellent compilation videos, just putting every single bit of this Hangman Page story together. It's on his YouTube channel called Outside Interference, and I believe he's going to drop. There's already been 3 episodes outlining everything so far, and I believe like the next few episodes, probably containing some of the results of today, will be up in the channel in the next few days. So shout out to him.
Jesse from the 6 says, easily the best show of the year for me. Honestly, maybe the best ever. I hope the buy rate for the show is great and AEW ratings go up and up. This is what pro wrestling should be. Just amazing.
We got a Fairuz from Malaysia who says, Full Gear is behind All Out in terms of quality of matches, but the ending will be forever remembered in AEW history. A culmination of the company's first major arc. Only downsides was no room for a breather after each match, which I hope they would have in future pay-per-views. 9 out of 10. Was that an issue that you found, John? Lack of breathing room? It's a rather unusual complaint, I have to say, these days. Like it is for us. It's common for you and I as people have to take notes, but for the common viewer, do you sense it being an issue?
Well, I didn't like hate this format. Like it was just go, go, go. And it's like, listen, the quality was pretty high. I think I'd have a very different viewpoint if it was like subpar wrestling in the same format, but that was not the case tonight at all. It is a lot. Like it was like nonstop 4 hours. But again, I kind of look at it from like our perspective that like I'm doing notes for all this that the average person
we need a
is not.
musical performance,
Yeah. But no, it's like clearly they're looking at it from like that point of view. And it did seem like there were, especially in the middle, like it was going very quick between matches to video to like, I think between the end of Britt Baker's win over Conti and Eddie Kingston walking out for the next match, it might have been like 4 minutes in between.
I do think there are lessons to be had, though. Absolutely, like with maybe some of the down state of the crowd throughout some of this
I never
show.
felt my time was wasted on this show.
No, you didn't. But the energy of the crowd dipped. We I think we're both in agreement of what I often think about though is like UFCs, where like over the span of like 3 hours they could present to you 5 matches with so much downtime in between.
Right.
But by the end of it, you feel completely satisfied. Maybe for all the matches, if they're good matches, you will feel up the entire time. I mean, can wrestling, can All Elite take from that?
It's also like an interesting like question for people that were at the arena tonight, where it's like, hey, if you wanted like go grab something to eat, you know what I mean? Or buy some merchandise. Like you had no window to do that on this pay-per-view. If you were there and you're invested in these matches, you really didn't have that time to duck out. But I mean,
it's maybe part of the issue when you only have 4 major shows a year. You want to make sure that everybody has a spot on this show. Yeah. So anyway, is it me?
I'll go next. It's Rory from Poconos, Pennsylvania. Full Gear really felt like a WrestleMania-like event. The card was built so well, and almost all the matches felt like they could either open or close the show due to both storyline builds and the star power. While the show went 4.5 hours long, including the buy-in, it was nonstop exciting. $50 is no small chunk of change, but you really get your money's worth with AEW pay-per-views. Only negative I have on is JR's commentary. Firstly, him talking during entrances, most specifically Darby Allin's video, saying, "Looks like the Freebirds," when it was about his life story involving his uncle, was frustrating. Also, he sounds like he is commentating for really young WWE fans that have just started watching AEW recently in how he over-explains the psychology in wrestling matches. While AEW certainly is looking to gain more fans, his commentary can be overbearing at times, especially the AEW diehards like myself.
It's not an uncommon complaint of the commentary. I think we all who are longtime wrestling fans have incredible reverence for JR. But I imagine even he would admit to you that he is not the commentator that he used to be. That doesn't mean he doesn't provide value to these shows. I've spoken to casual fans who watch the show, and the first thing that they hear is Jim Ross, and it's a familiar voice, and I think that certainly adds something. Do I think he should be commentating every show? I personally don't think so. I would love to hear him, appear for special occasions. I would love for him to have a weekly talk show segment where he could sit down and conduct these interviews with these talents to talk about their stories. I don't think there's a better person in that backstage role than Jim Ross to convey the seriousness of, like an Adam Page storyline. Like he is perfect for that. And I think that's him performing at his best. Commentary, unfortunately, is not him at his best. But at the same time, that's not my decision. And I also don't know the metrics of what exactly a Jim Ross may provide. Obviously, Tony Khan feels he's more than, whatever mistakes that you may feel he makes on commentary. It's not a big enough deal for him to take him off. We get a Jamie who says, "Wow, what a show! Living in the UK, don't often stay up, but as it's my birthday, I had to treat myself. Happy birthday, Jamie."
Happy birthday, Jamie.
From the first match to the last, it was a pure joy. Is it wrong that I still think Eddie should have won? And the Cody Pac match fell flat as soon as Pac won.
I think it was better that Eddie lost. I thought it was way better for Eddie Kingston.
Agreed.
For both sides. Like, that was the better outcome.
Yeah, and I think you're supposed to want Eddie to win. I think, again, it should, to me, a longer term story that I hope they continue. He says that's nothing on Pac, but Cody was all the wrong heat. Some made up 3-way winner stip would have worked better without Cody. There's no way he can stay face after that night. I mean, I would have said the same thing after his last match, but he continues to play in this gray area, which I mean, sometimes I think it's deliberate to, keep us from guessing when he'll actually turn. Other times I think he strictly wants to just stay in this gray area forever, which might be satisfying to some, which might be completely unsatisfying to others. But we can at least say that they're very, very aware of his type of reaction.
Okay, a few more here. Dwayne from Ireland. MJF and Darby set the bar on this one, but I love the side headlock takeover finish. It's a toss-up between that and Punk Kingston for Match of the Night honors. There was definitely a lull in the middle of the card with the Cody tag match and the women's title match back-to-back. The tag had no place on this show, in my opinion, being completely lost in the shuffle when it could have been served as a featured main event on TV this week coming out of the show. Great moment for Hangman to finally win the big one, but how about the Hogan-esque shoulder up at 3.1 from Kenny after taking his own finish and 2 buckshots? One thing that's for sure, though, staying up till 5 a.m. for an AEW pay-per-view never feels like a bad idea. While flawed in areas, the show absolutely delivered for the most part. 8.5 out of 10.
I didn't notice the 3.1 kick out from Kenny. Did you?
I didn't either. No.
I mean, the moment of Paige winning was so big that I think it overshadowed any sort of subtlety. And I also don't really get mad at, I don't even get mad at Hogan kicking out at 3.1 because when you have a champion as dominant as you had Kenny, I think you want to retain a bit of that value, and I don't think it takes anything away from Paige. Like, Paige is the only one to have, I guess if you don't count Christian, the only one to have, to have pinned him clean, and this was about as clean as you can get. So it doesn't upset me really. Chris says, AEW has stolen the old takeover accolades, where every pay-per-view is better than the previous one, and each time I wonder how they could possibly outdo the previous. Such a wonderful night. Loved every minute of it.
Brian from New Jersey, really strong show, not at the level of All Out, but still a home run. How it all ended. Glad to see Adam Page's coronation. My match of the night was Punk and Kingston. Cody and Pac versus Andrade and Black didn't click for me. The 2 multi-man brawls exceeded my expectations. Genuine surprise in Jay Lethal signing, plus we get Ishii on Wednesday. While every match received plenty of time to me, it became very evident that they move really quickly from one match to the other on these pay-per-views, barely giving us time to breathe. Nevertheless, money well spent.
There you go. Demand for breathing room. Maybe breathing air should have a match.
Yeah, just like a collective exhale. Like maybe you bring out DDP for some
yoga,
and everyone breathes. And
John Morrison can come in to lead us through a guided meditation.
Of course.
Between matches.
That's right.
All right, we got a Ben from Vancouver who says, great show. Match of the night for me was Kingston Punk, mostly for the atmosphere. Really liked MJF, Darby, Brian, Miro, and the 10-man. Everything was solid to great, with the only okay thing being the women's match. Didn't like the finish of the tag titles match, and I thought the Bucks match was too long, but other than that, no complaints. I wanted a little more of a spectacular celebration for Hangman. Confetti or balloons would have made it feel more special. Did they have
had a big hug with the Dark Order? I thought that moment was great. Yeah. Way better than balloons.
Hey, they are going to
I have seriously, dude, have we ever done a post show where the complaint has been no balloons?
Never. No, it's usually the opposite. Like with Okada, too many balloons.
That's right. Too many balloons. That's pretty good.
But hey, remember, they are going to his home state on Wednesday.
That's going to be a huge show on Wednesday with him. That should be where he comes out on the horse.
Yeah, with confetti. Although I don't know if can you do confetti with horses? Like, are there rules with animals? And
oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Can't do pyro.
I don't know.
He says, Ben says, what do you see next for MJF? I thought for sure he was losing due to the botched interference from Wardlow, but I think the only logical step next is the title.
Yeah, that to me would be one that I would try and hold off on until the next pay-per-view. I could see that being, your Revolution show.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. I could see that.
And Muggin is our last piece of feedback of the night. I was on edge when the Bucks came out, and when the ref was down, I was relieved when the 3 count occurred, and 2 years paid off as Hangman conquered Kenny Omega, and it was cathartic as hell, and his celebration with the Dark Order gave me all the feels. The Elite all losing their matches needed to happen, and Full Gear came through on that promise.
Is that the case? Okay. Yeah, you're right. So the Bucks and the Super Click lose and Kenny lose. So yeah, that's interesting. Maybe they break up after this.
Yeah, I could see many different ways. Like if Kenny goes away for a little bit and that kind of is left unresolved, and then you can bring back Kenny, he can go the babyface route, he can come back, and there is countless stuff for Kenny, especially if we talk about like timing wise. Seriously, like I have no knowledge of like what his status is, but if he disappeared for a while and came back and you were further into this ability to bring over talent from New Japan, like he is front and center of just endless ideas of where you can go to.
Yes, absolutely. Were there any extra announcements? Because like, didn't they say like, what is it? Tony Khan would announce matches after Full Gear.
That's right.
I'm trying to look up right now. Chat room, if you guys are aware, let us know. But trying to see.
Yeah, I don't know. We went live right after this, so I don't know what was said on the conference call after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever. We'll update everybody. I mean, we'll be back on Monday anyway, so
yes.
There you go.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us live tonight for the AEW Full Gear post show. On Sunday night, WrestleNomics Radio will be dropping with Brandon Thurston and Chris Gullo, so check that out at postwrestling.com. And then Way and I will be back on Monday. We will be doing a post-daily news update during the day where I'm going to do my best to watch the New Japan show before Monday, the card that is probably wrapping up right as we speak in San Jose. There was absolutely no way to watch both of these shows.
Yeah, a bit of an update here, and thanks to Hansi in the chat room, but and this comes from Brian Alvarez, who I believe is in the attendance at San Jose. He says, Ospreay offers Okada a shot at the real IWGP Championship, saying he is the real champion. He says Okada can face Shingo for the interim title on January 4th, and he will face the winner on the 5th. So
Ospreay will face the winner on the 5th. Okay, that makes sense. Jonah Rock also showed up at the New Japan show in San Jose. So that was notable as well. Okay, so we will chat about that more on Monday. In the meantime, you can go to postwrestling.com. Lots of stuff up there, including all of the latest shows, the NWA podcast, everything else can be found there. Way, thank you as always. And that is it for us.
Thank you, John.
Goodbye.